G'day brewers, welcome to my channel, The Backyard Brewer. My name's Jeff, and today we're going to be talking about how I release pressure from a pressure vessel in order to do a dry hop. So I've been fermenting my pale ale, as you can see here, at around 17 psi, and at that pressure you can't just release it through your pressure release valve and take the lid off. As you release pressure when it's that high, you're going to have a huge explosion of CO2 out of your beer, which is going to push the krausen on top of your beer. It's going to expand it right up through your headspace, and it's going to push that krausen out your pressure release valve, and you're just going to make a huge mess. So what you need to do is you need to do the whole process relatively slowly and let bits of pressure out at a time in order to allow all that CO2 to escape safely without the beer or krausen coming out your pressure release valve or your spunding valve, as you can see here. So the first thing I do is I get my spunding valve, which is already on the vessel, set at 17 psi for the fermenting pressure, and I slowly start releasing pressure from the spunding valve. I only do a little bit at a time, and I let it slowly drop, and as it drops you can see the krausen start to really expand as the CO2 comes out of solution in the beer. And what happens is the krausen will rise right up towards the neck, the narrow neck section of the Fermenter King Junior, and when it gets close up to that neck, I'll just tighten the valve back up and stop the pressure release and just let the krausen head settle back a bit. And as it settles back a bit and drops back out of the neck space, I'll then open it up again and release more pressure and just do this little dance over and over again. So I'm releasing a little bit of pressure, and then the krausen pushes up in the neck space, and then I close it back up, allow the krausen to settle back down, and then release a little bit more. Now I've found that the first 10 psi at least is fairly easy to release. You can get down to about 4 to 6 psi relatively quickly within the first few minutes. But it's when you get down to that 4 to 5, 6 psi range that the krausen is now really high up in the vessel, and it's encroaching on the neck. And the problem is, if it gets too high up the neck, it's going to start coming up the gas inlet pipe, and if it goes up through the gas inlet, obviously it's going to go up through the disconnect and into the spunding valve itself, and it's going to probably damage your spunding valve, and you just don't want that. You don't want to get any beer or gunk in your spunding valve if you can avoid it. So you have this little dance, and for about 10 minutes at least of this period, maybe 15 even, I'm just basically dancing around the 1 to 5 psi range, and trying to get down to that magical 0 psi so I can get the lid off and do my dry hop. Now the whole process itself took me about 24 minutes in total, from the first pressure release to the point where I was able to take the spunding valve off and remove a lid for my dry hop. So that's probably about as fast as you're going to get. I mean, I sat there and monitored the whole process from start to finish. So you could probably do it a bit slower if you went away, and you wouldn't have to sit there. So if you don't have time to sit there and do the whole process slowly yourself, you could actually just slowly release the pressure over a few hours. So drop it from 17 or 15 psi down to about 10, and then walk away, and then come back and then drop it down to about 5 with your spunding valve. And obviously you're dropping the resistance level of your spunding valve, so you're allowing, in the first stage you allow gas to come out at 10 psi and let it settle, and then so forth. So, and as you can see just then, I've taken the spunding valve off, and I've now put gas back on. So what happened was the krausen just got too high up in the neck, and I couldn't stabilize it quick enough. So I've literally just connected some gas at low pressure and pushed it back down with some CO2, and then connected the spunding valve back up and restarted the process of releasing that pressure again. Now it seems kind of counterintuitive, but I just had the krausen go too far up the neck, and I just needed to push it down. I didn't want to risk anything getting into my spunding valve. And also you can probably notice the actual levels of the beer in the Fermenter King Junior aren't that high. I've probably only got about 18 litres of fermenting beer in this, and I have thought about pushing it higher, but yeah, if you push it higher, it's probably going to take even more time. So if you fill this even higher to 19 litres, it's going to take you even more time to release that pressure because you're just not going to have the same headspace. So we're getting close now. We're down to about 1 to 2 psi, and I'm just letting that krausen and settle a bit more. Getting closer and closer now. And of course this is sped up 400 times, so this was 24 minutes of footage, pushed down to about 5.5 something minutes. And that head's settling. It's settling down. I'm still around 2 psi here on the gauge. Waiting for the final release. Here we go. Gauge is dropping down. The krausen's stable. It's not pushing up any higher anymore. The pressure's low enough now that I can release the pressure without it pushing up. And we're pretty much done.